you on what we have coming up at Bethel. Wrapping presents, not your gift? Well, from now until December 21st, Elevate wants to help eliminate the stress of wrapping Christmas gifts. You can drop off your gifts that need wrapping, and for a donation, we will wrap it, place a bow on it, and a gift name tag. Just make sure to let us know when you'd like to pick it up. Final day to drop off gifts will be December 21st, and all gifts must be picked up by December 23rd. All proceeds will go to Speed the Light. We'd like to remind you of our ministry, Fitness and Faith, which is our community and accountability ministry. The focus is on helping you reach your fitness goals. Fitness and Faith is every second and fourth Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. Some past activities have included reading and understanding food labels, dog walking, and learning exercises of different intensity levels. This Thursday, Aaron will be discussing how to make wise choices at holiday meals and exercises to help that food baby. So come this Thursday at 6 p.m., ready to learn and share your own knowledge and skills. Every Sunday from 9:45 to 10:15, you can join our pre-service huddle. It's a chance to fellowship, have some donuts, and grab a cup of coffee before service. So hang out in the foyer or in the Speed the Light Cafe after Sunday school. Corporate prayer is one of the most important things we can do as a church body. Please join us tonight at 6 p.m. for PNP. And we'd like to welcome the first-time guests. If you're a first-time guest, we ask that you fill out a communication card located in the pew in front of you and place it in the envelope later in the service. Thank you so much for choosing to worship with us.
Amen. I love that transition. If you're able and willing this morning, would you stand with us? Feel free to come to the front. I just want to encourage you to connect with our Creator this morning. That's the beautiful opportunity that we get. We're going to sing about redemption. We're going to sing about how once we were lost, but now we're found. Just a beautiful thing. Let's sing.
Think about the idea that God, who created the universe, the God who knows us each by name and the number of hairs on our head, is with us. On the night before Jesus was crucified, he said this, and I believe that he would say it to us here this morning. When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table, and he said to them, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you again, I will not eat it again until it finds fulfillment in the kingdom of God. My friends, Jesus would say to us this morning, I have eagerly desired to share this moment with you. Amen. This morning we are going to partake in the body and the blood of Jesus Christ. It's more than just a religious ritual and eating a piece of bread and drinking a thimbleful of juice. It is participating in the body and the life of Jesus Christ. We've come to the table this morning. And here at his table, he wants to, with us, dine and lavish himself upon us, to feed us from his word, and have us participate in all that is him. I'm going to ask those who are going to be serving communion to come. You may be seated for just a moment, but please keep that attitude of worship as we get ready to partake. After taking the cup, he gave thanks and said, take this and divide it among you, for I tell you, I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until the kingdom comes. And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." The body and the blood of Jesus. We partake together today at the Lord's table of who he is and in remembrance of what he has done for us. those who are weary and heavy burden, come, and I will give you rest. He's invited us this morning to his table to feast on who he is and what he is. We do this not just in remembrance. We do this in anticipation, not only from what he's done, but for what's coming ahead of us when he returns for his church. He took the bread, if you would lift it with me. He took the bread and he said, "This is my body that was broken for you. Let's partake together." He said, "This cup represents my blood, the blood that was shed for you." My friends, without the shedding of blood, there could be no remission of sins.
Amen.
You and I were sinners, hopelessly doomed. But Jesus called our name. Maybe he's never called your name. He's calling your name today.
Amen.
Come. Come. Participate in the life of Jesus Christ. Let's participate in the cup together. Hallelujah. Let your heart worship.
Glory to your name.
We worship you, Father.
Glory to your name.
Little bridge, day and night, night and day. Incense represents the prayers of the saints. Let our prayers ascend before him night and day.
Glory and praise.
Night and day, let incense arise. Day and night, night and day, let incense arise. Day and night, night and day, let incense arise. Day and night, night and day, let incense arise. Day and night, night and day, let incense arise. Day and night, night and day, let incense arise. Hallelujah. We worship.
Thank you, my Jesus.
We worship.
Thank
Praise
you,
him
Lord
today.
God.
Hallelujah. In Proverbs chapter 3, it says this: honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. I'm going to ask the ushers to come. And this morning, just in response to the word and the presence of God, we're not going to collect money. We're coming to give our first fruits. God doesn't want our leftovers. He He wants the first fruits. God didn't give us His leftovers. He gave us His very best. This morning I want us as an act of worship to bring to God our first fruits. God has blessed us. All that we have belongs to Him. He's only asked that we bring that tithe to Him as an act of worship. It's an act of obedience. And the promise is, you put me first, I will take care of every need that you'll ever have. Are you with me? Father, we thank you for the privilege of worshiping you through our giving. We give today not under compulsion, but we give, Lord, with joy and happiness. Praying that everything that we offer unto you, you would turn into a gift to help those who are most in need. That you would use to propagate your gospel, to take your message of healing to the lost and the hurting, the poor and the sick. We give as an act of worship. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You may be seated. We are blessed this morning as we collect the offering. This is something really special. For those of you who know me and know my background, the Hastings family, we're all trumpeters. My dad was really good. My oldest brother was probably better. My next brother was pretty good, and then the gene pool got all diluted, and I messed it all up. Last time I tried to play a musical instrument, I got fired. And so, but anyway, something very special. We're honored to have with us somebody who's an incredible trumpeter. He's up here playing the guitar. He's going to bless us this morning. Jake, do it. Thankful. Jake, thank you so much. Told him my mom will be crying out there before you're done. When she hears the trumpet, she turns on the tears. And I'm a little bit like that too, so thank you. I want to encourage you in the next couple of weeks, you're going to hear some music specials. All of these specials we will be performing on the night of our Christmas Eve service. Christmas Eve, we are going to have a very special night. We're just going to, I don't know what we're going to call it. I told Luke, I just want to class it up a little bit. Amen? We're just going to have a wonderful night with some powerful music, a great and short Christmas message about the meaning of Christmas. I want to encourage you not only to be here, but bring your friends. Tell them, listen, there's 2 times a year any heathen will come to church.
Easter and Christmas.
Christmas and Easter.
Yep.
So if they'll come, let's invite them. Amen. Would you invite them? It is going to just be a special night so much. I also want to encourage you, next Sunday is going to be a special day. Rob and Beth, stand up. I don't know if everybody knows who you are. Stand up. Don't give me a mouth, just stand up. Rob and Beth have joined us in the last 6 months or so, and they are going to share their testimony next week. Rob's more nervous about it than Beth. I said, Rob, don't worry about it. You're up there with Beth. What are you going to get to say? You may be seated. But I want to tell you, they have a great story of God's redemption and what He's doing in their life. Not only that, I had a dual-edged sword. I wanted you to hear their testimony, but I also know they have an awful lot of friends who need Jesus that I believe are going to come and hear their story next week when they come. So thank you, Rob and Beth. It's going to be a special Sunday. Please plan on that. This Thursday night, Joy will be having their Christmas party. They meet at 5:30. If you want to be a part of that, please sign up today, and you need to pay today. They cater that in, so we need to know how many, and we need to actually have your money in hand so you don't sign up for 10 and then not show up. Not that anybody. But anyway, please see Ron and George. You get signed up and pay for that. We're going to have a wonderful time Thursday night with that. I'm going to ask this morning, I'm going to have a little help today too. I'm going to ask my wife, Arnetta, and Jan Smith. Jan, I don't see you. Where are you at? She didn't sneak out on me, did she? Come on up. Come on up. They're going to help me with a little bit this morning and just share some special things. Let's give them a hand. This is the only person in the church I can read the platform with the kids. So.
There you go.
That's my mother-in-law.
Go ahead and have a seat. I'll get to you in a minute, all right? I just have to sit out front and everybody be nervous for a few minutes. So, anyway, hey, do you have my meme up here, Courtney?
Your meme?
I saw this meme on Facebook about a week ago. Want to keep Christ in Christmas? Feed the hungry.
Amen.
Comfort the afflicted. Love the outcast. Forgive the wrongdoer. Inspire the hopeless.
Amen.
You want to keep Christ in Christmas? Do something.
Amen.
Amen?
Amen.
Keeping Christ in Christmas is kind of my theme today. How many are for that?
Amen.
We all know there's a concerted effort on many non-Christians to erase Christmas from the public square. It's not just Christmas. The PC police just look for new things to be offended by.
Amen.
Are you with me?
Yep.
Every day. And for some reason, people listen to them. It used to make me angry. Now it just makes me sad. People are looking for purpose in life by attacking the very purpose of life. Lest we let ourselves feel that anger and get into the name-calling business and scream and holler and stoop into their level and get into that tossing back and forth, let us be reminded of something. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principality and power.
Amen.
People are not our enemies. People are our purpose. Even those who cast us out. Even those who mock us. Even those who want to set up satanic displays in the state capitol.
Hello.
Even they were purchased by Jesus.
Amen.
Amen.
We need to get the message across. This morning I want to come to you from a little bit different perspective. We have wasted enough time in the past being offended by people saying happy holidays. I don't care. There's Thanksgiving and New Year's and Christmas. There's a whole bunch of them in there. Happy holidays. I'm not offended. All right? There must be a more productive approach than to be offended by their attack. So the approach I want to take is to look, listen, and respond to the man whose birthday we celebrate.
Amen.
Are you with me?
Amen.
You see, pointing fingers is easy, but it accomplishes nothing. Because I cannot change others. All of my complaining about the war on Christmas is not going to change what's taking place in the public square. However, by responding to the words of Jesus, I can change. And if Jesus changes me, he will also change others through me.
Amen.
The next few words that I have to say may be a little bit difficult to listen to, but let's tune in and let's listen for just a moment, okay? Examining the words of Jesus, we can't help but discover that Jesus was much more concerned about what we do than what we say. Somewhere along the line in Western Christianity turned into a word religion. If we say the right thing, we get a ticket to heaven. If we say the right thing, God will lavish stuff on us and he'll make our lives happy and comfortable. If we say the right things in the right way, God will grant us a life of ease and allow us to just coast effortlessly through life. However, this is a foreign gospel to the man who proclaimed the gospel.
Amen.
This is foreign to what our leader told us. It's not good news at all. Jesus clearly taught that our words mean very little if they aren't supported by our actions.
Amen.
You can say Jesus is Lord all day long, but if your life says you have no faith, confidence, and you don't care what he says, your actions speak louder than your words. Could it be that the deterioration of the morals in our country and the lack of respect for Christianity and the followers of Jesus could at least be in part blamed on the church itself? Jesus said that people would know we are his disciples how?
By our love.
By our love. By our love for one another. Jesus said the whole world would know us by our love for one another. And yet, we are more commonly known today in America by our buildings. Instead of the church striving to be like Jesus and making people and their needs our focus, we have instead made our buildings and our programs the focus. We build buildings we cannot afford, then we develop programs to attract people to pay for the buildings we cannot afford, then we hire staff to run the programs to pay for the building that we can't afford, so we can pay the professional and we have no obligation ourselves. This is what the American church has become. That's hard to hear, church, but it is the absolute truth. We are more concerned about losing Jesus in the public square. We're more concerned about not being able to have a nativity scene on the public square than we are concerned about Jesus not even being in our churches.
Amen.
My challenge to you this morning is to focus our attention away from our anger over the world taking the Christ out of Christmas and towards putting Jesus back in the church. I love the church. I'm a product of the church. I love the church. I've been at this church. I've been in the church my whole life. I'm pretty sure my first Sunday on earth I was sitting in church. Well, I wasn't sitting. Probably laying in the corner making a lot of noise. Then it stopped. I love the church. Do you know, even during the period of my life when I wasn't serving the Lord, I still loved the church.
Yeah.
Amen.
I still went to church. I love the church. I don't understand people who don't love the church. I don't get, especially Christians who tell me, I don't need the church. I don't understand that. I don't get that. So I love the church. My whole life's been centered around the church. But it's that very love, my friend, that intense love for what the church is and what it's supposed to be, that breaks my heart. Because the church is broken. It'd be nice to say, well, this doesn't apply to us, it's out there. But my friends, we are the church. All of us. And if the church is broken, it means that we're broken. I've asked a couple people to come up here this morning, and we're just going to talk a little bit about what it means to put Christ back in Christmas, and indeed put Christ back in the church. Are you with me? Is everybody still with me? Anybody mad at me? Not yet. I'll keep going. Hang in there. How did I know that? Listen, my purpose is not to tear down, but to build up. I fear that we spend so much time looking outside at the problems that we're failing to look at inside at the problems. My friend, there's a world that needs Jesus.
Amen.
And as a church, if we were a factory, our product would be disciples. Disciples who follow Jesus. And my friends, we're not producing much. We've got to be honest with ourselves. So rather than moping about it, what I want to do is I want to talk about some tangible ways that we can begin this Christmas season, some tangible ways to put Jesus back in the church. Are you with me?
Amen.
All right, so here's what I want to do. I need to make sure this thing is on. I forgot to do a test. Test, 1, 2.
Yep.
You got to understand, Arnetta just went to pieces when I handed her a microphone. I want to read from you Luke chapter 14 and verse number 12. Then Jesus said to his host, when you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers, or your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous.
Amen.
What does it mean to put Christ back in Christmas? It's not changing your vocabulary or screaming about those who are trying to change your vocabulary. What it means is that we begin to do what Jesus told us to do. Arnetta, how do we use the Christmas season to celebrate during our time in China? I think if you've got a few, just let those pictures scroll. She don't even know what's up there. So you can just put them up there. Go ahead.
We would always look for Chinese friends. We invited the students to our home a lot. We had Chinese friends that taught us Chinese who weren't Christians. We'd invite them to our home. We always had Christmas parties, and at that time we would feed them and just talk to them and have fellowship, but we always told the Christmas story. And Todd would sit down and read that, and in China we weren't allowed to do a lot of witnessing and stuff, so we would always have to share what we call American culture, and we would talk about how Christians celebrate Christmas in America, and then we would talk about non-believers and the Santa Claus thing, and then that would keep us okay as far as government was concerned. But
I really put that picture in there.
but most of our Chinese students were open to the story of Christ's birth, and so it was a good time for us to have them in and have those opportunities.
So I was going to say, you kind of answered it, but what was the kind of, if you can, talk just a little bit about how the students responded to just inviting them in for dinner. We sit down and have dinner with them, right? We cook them meals, we take their pictures.
Another way that we would share Christ to the students in our home a lot throughout the year is just being kind to one another. And they always asked us, well, how come you're so happy all the time? You're never sad. Or how come you two don't fight? You always seem to get along. And we would just share that we have Jesus in our life, and through him we can do these things. And that was another way, we had opportunities to share. One thing that was funny, they would come to our home, especially the college students. A lot of times they'd never been in a foreigner's home. So they were always mesmerized by how we decorate or whatever. And they'd run around the house with their cell phones taking pictures. And then they would send them home to their parents to show them how we live. And so that was another way we would share Christ. It's just being kind and friendly to them and always welcoming them into our home.
One time, one of those, this has no spiritual value at all, but one time they come into the home and we kept our wedding picture posted there on the wall, and this guy looks at me and Arnetta, and he looks at the picture, and he looks back at us again, he looks at the picture, and he does it 3 or 4 times. Finally, he looks at Arnetta and he said, "You used to be pretty."
And that was another thing. Chinese are very blunt. They will tell you what they're thinking, and you just learn to.
You notice he
tell
never
them what
told me
you're
that I
thinking.
even used to be pretty. All right. So anyway, and the results of that, we actually saw, kids, you just open up your home and your life and you get in proximity where the salt gets out of the shaker and kind of into the world a little bit. There was just this natural desire.
I had one young lady, Connie, is her English name. She came to Christ, and I would meet with her once a week for lunch, and she knew nothing. So we would have lunch, and then while we did the dishes, I would just play worship music, and afterwards, then we would sit and read the Bible together, and a way to share Christ with her in that activity. And that went well. We did that for over a year before we came home, and then she did get plugged into a Chinese church. That was always our goal. As they did come to Christ and we discipled them a little bit, we would then seek out a Chinese church, because we didn't want them to think it was just a Western religion that, they could serve Christ in China without us being there.
Okay. Do you think that same approach, I mean, China's China. This is America. We're different than China, right? Does that approach work in America?
I think it could. That's another reason why we love having people over to our homes for dinners. He had shot and hurt folks over many times, and we've just always tried to be open and sharing Christ with our friends, our co-workers, people that are just in our everyday lives. And
why do you think it works that way?
because most people, if they weren't raised in church, they're just more open to going to a home, a gathering, whether you're eating or playing games and just getting to know each other. They're more open to that than coming and sitting in a church service with a bunch of people they don't know.
See, we live in a post-Christian culture. 50 years ago, everybody in America understood church, and most everybody in America went to church. Right? They don't do that. They're not even thinking about it. It's not on their radar. It's not a consideration. If you ask them to come to the church, they've got all these mental images that have been built up, some deserved by the church, some undeserved. But they've got all these mental images of the negative things of the church, and they don't want to participate in that. But anybody will sit down and break bread with you, my friend.
Amen.
Anybody will sit down. And listen, not everybody. This is our hobby. It's what we love to do. We like to put people in our home and eat and cook, right? Not everybody. That's not everybody's thing. Sometimes we need to stretch ourselves a little bit and do things that maybe we're not entirely comfortable with. But you know what? What are you doing to engage the world? The point is how are you engaging people who don't already know Jesus so that they can taste and see that the Lord is good? I go back to the salt and light thing. If the salt never gets out of the shaker, what good is it? And if people never get a chance to taste the Lord through our lives, if there's nothing that separates us or distinguishes us from everybody else, if we rant and rave and scream and holler and we're just like everybody else, how are they going to know we're the disciples of God? And my friend, the challenge this morning is for you to be real and to think, why wait for someday? What am I going to do this Christmas season to engage the unchurched and the unsaved? I'm asking, that's a real question. What are you going to do? You're not sure? Come talk to me sometime. I'd love to sit down and talk to you about ideas. Horizons, we serve lunch there once a month. You can go there any day and eat lunch. Sit down at a table with a bunch of needy people who need to hear and just know the love of Jesus. There's a lot of ways to do it. But the point is you have to determine that it needs to be done. Do you love Jesus? Has Jesus really made a difference in your life? You know, when you love somebody, you can't quit talking about it.
Amen.
You just can't let it go. You just can't. Arnetta just can't quit talking about me. I want to take that to the next step because, listen, this is simple. It doesn't take much requirement. It doesn't take much effort to just engage people who aren't Christians. And without yelling at them and telling them all the things they're doing wrong, just befriending them and introducing them to the guy that we love so much, right? That's simple. I want to read for you another passage of Scripture. You want to hand the microphone off, honey? You made it. Matthew 25, beginning to read verse number 31, says this. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his throne in heavenly glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from the other as a shepherd separates sheep from goats. He will put the sheep on the right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see a stranger, and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison, go to visit you? And the king will reply, I tell you the truth, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. Then he will say to those on his left, Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. They will also answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick in prison and did not help you? And he will reply, I tell you the truth, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. Actions are all that matter. Our words are important, but only if they are supported by our actions. Are you with me? Many of you don't know Jan, who's sitting up here today. Jan is Chelsea's mother. So we have Jan to thank for that lovely young lady back there. Amen. Which I'm very thankful. She's a great blessing to me. A few weeks ago, Jan had us to her house for tacos, so I immediately fell in love with her. And there was more there than I could eat. If you can imagine that. But just in a brief span of time, we began to hear Jan's story. Jan comes to church every now and then. I think she has another church she attends every now and then. And, you know, when we worship, she's not up here in front. She's not dancing. She's not loud and screaming. And, you know, she's not up front. She's not all that, right? But when Jan began to tell her story, my heart broke. Because I said, this is Christianity. So Jan, just a couple questions real quick. How many children have you adopted?
I've adopted 5.
You've adopted 5. How many have you fostered?
I fostered 45.
45. 45. We're going to get to the adoption in just a minute because, like I said, we're a beneficiary of that act that she took. But I want to talk about 45 foster children. What kind of children come to you that when you're a foster parent?
Well, my late husband and I, we fostered children with medical needs. And actually, Chelsea and her brother were our first 2. Chelsea was 13 months and Garrett was 3 weeks old. Garrett was failure to thrive, and Chelsea had been very malnourished, and they brought them to us, and the investigator told us that Garrett was here to die. And my husband looked at the investigator and said, that's not an option here. And so we did a crash course on what it takes to pull a failure to thrive infant out, and they have to lay on your heartbeat all the time. And it took a couple weeks, but his eyes started to move, he started to whimper. Chelsea started to be able to eat and get around, and they both pulled out of it. But many of our children had come from horrible backgrounds, horrible abuse backgrounds, where, you know, multiple broken bones, burns, and had to have a lot of medical attention.
Okay. So not just taking them in, you're looking for really the tough cases, huh? Not everybody wants, you know, somebody with medical needs. And,
right.
because that's work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, a lot of doctor's appointments. So.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. So you kind of told us a little bit about Chelsea and her brother that you took in. Let me ask you this. Had you not taken Chelsea and her brother in, what do you think would happen to them?
If they probably would have stayed with the birth family, I really don't know that they'd even be here because the mom just couldn't remember to feed them and change them. I mean, Garrett had not been changed in a diaper that he came home from the hospital in. He had been in the same diaper for 2 weeks. And so he had blisters all over him from not being changed. So they just quite possibly couldn't have even been alive.
I've never seen Jan dancing at the altar. Chelsea sitting back there this morning in training to be credentialed with the Assemblies of God, preparing possibly for a career in mission someday. Because she did the tough thing, not the easy thing. You didn't do it for Chelsea. You did it for Jesus. 45 people coming through foster care. When I was a youth pastor many years ago, we had a lot of foster kids in our youth group. That's a long story. I won't get into that. Unfortunately, I saw kids who were taken out of bad situations in their home and put in worse situations in foster homes.
Yeah.
But my friend, where's the state supposed to put them if the Christians don't step up and open their homes? Bernetta and I began that process. The Lord called us down on that. I can make all my excuses in the world, but I got out of it. I don't mean to say it that way. That's not what I meant. Life changed for us. But But I just remember the devastation that I experienced with the foster care system. And it's not the state's fault. It's that we need to put Christ back in the church. And the church needs to get back to caring more about people than our buildings and our programs. Understand? We need to care more about people that are hurting and dying. Here's all I got from Jan. All I got was this lady has an intense love for God and wants to do something tangible out of it. She wants to make a difference. One other thing she shared with me, and it fits perfectly with this verse, she used to have a minister that, would you tell us the story of your clothing minister? Would you just come share that with me?
Well, when most of our foster children would arrive at our home, most of them would not even have clothes. They would arrive with nothing, and or they could not bring anything with them, especially children who were being taken out of meth houses. They're not allowed to even have the clothes that are on their backs on. And when Garrett arrived, like I say, he was a 3-week-old baby, and half of a torn undershirt wrapped in a gray towel, and he came from the hospital like this, and I kept saying, why weren't there any clothes to put on this child? And they just said, there's just nothing out there. So I made some inquiries, and I started talking with several churches and said, you know, I want to start a clothes closet, and I want to be able to provide clothes to all the social service agencies so that if they have to take a child from a home, that this child can arrive at the foster home with some clothes and a toy and have something they feel like is their very own. And I started collecting clothes and doing this out of my house, and caseworkers kept coming by the house and picking up bags of clothes and taking them to their children or their clients that needed it, and it got bigger, and then another agency asked for if they could, you know, get some clothes, and another agency, and I was like, okay, this is getting too big. So I invited several of the area ministers in for a luncheon down at DCFS, and we talked about all the things that we could do to help kids who are in foster care. And I said, one of the things is we need a place to put clothes and supplies because these kids are arriving with nothing. And so a space was provided for me, and for 15 years I had it at another church, and then it got bigger and bigger there, and then we were able to open it up to the public every Tuesday. We became a resource for the entire family. We had clothes and household items for the entire family. We had a lot of homeless come in, and you know, to get clothes or to get a coat or something they need. But the one thing I always found was so amazing is these people would have nothing, and they would come in, and when Mike was alive, he would pray with these people and talk to them. And the funny thing that they would always ask for, and you think, you know, they're homeless, you know, maybe they need a blanket, maybe they need a coat, but so many of them would ask for a Bible. That would be the one thing that they would ask if we had extras, and we would try. We didn't always have them, but that's what they would ask for, and we tried to see if we could scrounge one up and send them off with a Bible. But there's just so many people out there that are struggling. There's children who, you know, really need our help in this community. People don't always, you know, hear about it in the news, but they do. I mean, we have kids who go to school here, they don't even have socks on their feet. They don't have underwear. A lot of kids, they don't have basic items that they need.
She didn't mention any names of churches, right? So I think we're okay. But that eventually fell apart.
Yeah.
You want to share just briefly about how that would happen there? Or would you rather not share?
No, that's fine. I mean,
yeah. Here's what she told me. They eventually fell apart because the church that was playing host didn't like all those kind of people hanging around.
Yes, they told us that they didn't want my riffraff coming in, and that they didn't want those people because those people couldn't put money in the offering plate, and they didn't want to play host to it anymore. And I have to say, do you not understand where we're at? We're in the house of God. This is His house, and we're helping His people. But they just didn't see it that way.
Can I say something? I don't know the church either. I don't even know what she's talking about somehow. Some of those same people are complaining this week because somebody said Happy Holidays to them and not Merry Christmas. Does that make my point? And before we be too judgmental of those who turn away, we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing? What are we doing? I didn't do this to elevate Jan. We have a giant amongst us, and his name is Jesus. And she's letting him live through her. See, that's real Christianity. It's not a theory, that's not words. That's not, let's all feel good and go home today and talk about the pastor's good sermon. This morning, this is an individual challenge to every single one of us. How are we opening our doors? What are we doing to go and engage the needy? Jesus made priority out of people. Period. People. Not programs, not buildings. People mattered to Jesus. Would you stand with me this morning? Jan and Arnetta, thank you so much for sharing with me today. Luke, would you come back, please? I was reading in my devotions this week, and I got to be honest with you, I've read the Bible through I don't know how many times. I don't know. I wouldn't even guess. Lots of times I've been through the Bible. I've read every story in it many, many, many times, and this thing jumped off, and I thought, I don't even remember this story. I think that the Holy Spirit had reserved it for today. In Mark chapter 4, verse 26, he also said, this is what the kingdom is like. A man scatters seed on the ground. Night and day, whether he sleeps or gets up, the seed sprouts and grows, though he doesn't know how. All by itself, soil produces grain. First the stalk, then the head, then the full kernel in the head. As soon as the grain is ripe, he puts the sickle to it, because the harvest has come. You see, all that's required of us is to scatter the seed. All that's required of us is to scatter seed. If we put the seed out there, we don't know how that works. We don't know how that grows. We don't know what the end game is. Jan had no way of knowing what Chelsea would be at this point in her life. All she knew was, here was a little girl that just needed somebody to love them and to nurture them. She doesn't know how those Bibles that she handed out to homeless people are affected. Arnetta doesn't know how the ladies that came into her cooking class in our home, thinking they were there to learn English, but finally hearing about Jesus. We don't know what the end result of that is. My friend, what we do know is when we scatter the seed grows. The seed takes root in the soil, and the seed grows. Today, my friend, not somewhere in the future, not next Christmas, not my New Year's resolution. Today, my friend, your pastor is looking at you and challenging you. Where are you going to sow seed? You can spend thousands of dollars on Christmas presents this year and accomplish nothing. But where are you going to sow seed into people's lives? Listen, I'm not televangelist. I'm not saying sow your seed and give me your money. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about clothing the naked. I'm talking about praying for the sick. I'm talking about helping that one who can't pay their rent. I'm talking about that neighbor who's going through a divorce and feeling lost and hopeless and just needs a friend to stand with them. I'm talking about that colleague at work that can't get beyond their addictions and is watching their life destroyed, but they just need somebody to love them. I sat with a young lady in my office. Karen always bringing people to me, but I sat with a young lady in my office one night who's been rejected by the whole world. Her parents don't want her, her mother don't want her, her dad don't want her, nobody wants her. I just told her we loved her, that Jesus loved her. There's all this anger on the surface, but man, just a little thing on Facebook telling her I'm thinking about her. She said in my office that night, Karen and I first talked to her, and she said, I heard the voice of God tonight.
Amen.
She sat right there. She heard the voice of God. Got to engage him. I'm going to ask you all to make your way to the altar this morning, if you're physically capable. Why do we do the altar thing? This is a tangible expression. When you take that step out of your seat, you're coming. You're accepting the challenge. I want to sow seed. I want to do more. Not so I can earn my salvation, but because I am saved. Not so Jesus will like me more, because Jesus already loves me unconditionally. I want to love others unconditionally. Are you with me? It's real. It's real. Sometimes that charity starts at home. Maybe you got kids that are straying from the Lord, they're struggling. My friend, God hears your prayers. God knows your heart. I've watched my boys struggle, and I've watched God bring my boys home. And it's the greatest feeling in the world. Because once they've tasted, man, once they've tasted, they're ruined for the world. Mom and Dad, hang in there. Got a marriage that's hurting. My friend, hang in there. God is faithful to his promise. In all things, let's remember this. In order to more fully receive what God has promised to us, we've got to be givers.
Amen.
We're givers first. We're givers first. Would you pray with me? Father, today we come as a church and we stand before you. Father, forgive us for a wordy religion. Forgive us, God, because at times we have majored in minor things. Oh, we've minored in major things. We have strained gnats and swallowed camels. God, the beauty is we're still your children. Lord, when we stand before you, we want to stand knowing that we were obedient to your words. Holy Spirit, come this morning. Would you begin now just to invite the Holy Spirit to come? Come on with your own mouth, with your own words. Just Spirit, come today. Spirit, come today and fill your church. Anoint us with your power, O God. Come and fill us this morning to overflowing with the power of your Spirit. Fresh and new, God. Oh God, may we not rely on our merit badge that we earned 50 years ago. Let us fresh and new taste of your Holy Spirit today. Let your Holy Spirit come. Take up residence in us. Abide in us. Oh God, come. Come, Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit. Come and fill your church. Come and fill your church, God. God, give us eyes to see. Oh, give us eyes to see the hurting all around us. God, begin to speak to hearts right now. Holy Spirit, begin to speak to hearts right now, showing them how to sow their seeds, how to get it out there. We love you. We honor you. Hearers only. We have taken a look into the mirror of your word today. Or perhaps it's exposed things that we don't really want to see. But the beauty is that you are everything. Cleanse us. We might look like Jesus. I've been closing a lot this way, and I'm going to probably continue. I don't know. But you now have a choice, my friend. I love you with all of my heart. The greatest honor of my life is to stand on this platform and serve as your leader. My friend, if I'm just ushering you into a life of ease and comfort that does not change and transform people, God forbid. I present the word to you this morning with conviction and with love. And now you must respond. The response is entirely up to you. You can walk out of here. Boy, that Jan, she's sure a nice lady. Well, she sure did some good things. So happy. Got to hear from Jan. Poor Arnett is such a sweetheart. She's such a sweet lady. It's not the response the Lord's looking for, my friend. Where are you going to scatter your seed? Where are you going to scatter the seed? What are you going to do? Because actions are so much more important than words. If you were to come to me after service and say, I'm going to warn you and say, Pastor, great word. I'm going to look you back in the eye and I'm going to say, prove it. Prove it. You want to do something great with Jesus? Notice I didn't say for him. don't do anything for him. We do everything with him. How many want your life to matter? Chelsea and her brother, those weren't the only lives, literally, that Jan has saved. She loves so much, she even adopts pets. I hear that and I'm like, what am I doing? Come on. This is what I want. I want to save lives. I want to see souls ushered into the kingdom. I want to hear him say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Come and enter into my rest. Father, pour out your Spirit upon your church. Fill their hearts. Begin right now to lay souls upon their hearts. Give them pictures. Give them mental images of people in need. Lord, I pray that you would just challenge them and provoke them and prompt their hearts. Lord, we want to make a difference. Not to build our kingdom, but to see others come into yours. Lavish your love upon your church. In Jesus' name we pray. Now, by this will all men know that you are my disciples. We kind of cut that verse short. We said, by your love. That's not the whole thing, is it? It says, by your love for one another. So all this begins right here. So this is kind of a silly way to end the service, but you're going to love on somebody before you go. Would you do it? Love somebody.